Hi, welcome to the Mentorship Challenge. I'm Marc Wainer and I'm passionate about mentorship. In my career, I've been fortunate enough to have had mentors who have advised and guided me. This no doubt has played a huge part in my success. Mentorship is when someone has a wealth of knowledge and experience and is willing to share it. The mentors on this show are all hugely successful in their respective fields and will pledge some of their valuable time. You could be the next mentee. Register on the website. It could change your life. So one of the questions that I have for my special guest is, how old do you need to be to understand the business of business? Hopefully we're going to find out more about that when I talk to Zuki Mzozoyana. Before we get into young entrepreneurs, just like to go back because I found something quite fascinating.
Happy.
You started off doing a degree at University of Port Elizabeth, and in your words, you were a dropout. But that didn't deter you because, as you said, you're not a person who runs your life by certificates. You then went on to study, of all things, the motor business, and then you did, and are currently doing an MBA, which is fantastic. But for me, how did you make the leap? Because you started off in the motor industry, becoming a dealer principal of a large motor dealership in Johannesburg, and then out of the motor business into a totally different field, which is educating young people in the business of business. How did that happen?
For me, it's a journey about self-discovery, and it's a journey about continuous learning and perfecting. And I think the old guard would look at my journey and say, oh, you're career hopping.
But what you're doing now is you're taking children who are far too young to even think about a driver's license, and yet you are teaching them skills about business. Does a child of 7, are they even numerate? Do they understand?
Yeah. So all of us are born with the innate understanding of business skills. So some people talk about the science of business. We talk about the soft skills in business, things like the ability to think, to analyze, to critically analyze a situation, a problem, to create a solution from it, to work as a team, to assemble a team, to understand opportunity spotting, to be creative. And kids play. And in playing, they learn those skills. Before school narrows and molds their way of thinking in a linear fashion, kids have that ability to try and experiment. They're courageous. They're not afraid of failure. And that's what business is.
But don't you think background also plays a large part? So for example, when I grew up, my parents had what would today be called a little spaza shop, or maybe a bit bigger. And I had to go there at evenings and weekends and weigh milli meal and rice and what size packet you used determined the profitability.
Yes.
So we were brought up with that.
Yes.
Okay. Kids from the more disadvantaged communities, parents are commuting and working on a job, so they're not really exposed. And then I suppose one of my concerns, again, for the new generation that comes through, those that have the privilege of being middle class or wealthier, are not hungry enough. They're too spoiled to actually understand where does money come from, what is the value of anything. So that's something where I think that what you're doing is actually brilliant, okay? And I think it really plays a role, because these kids that you're teaching, if I'm right, what you're trying to teach them are skills so that when they get to what we in South Africa call the youth, the 18-year-olds plus, who, with the greatest respect, many of them are unemployed, but don't have these basic skills.
Correct.
So is that the gap you're trying to fill?
Absolutely. You touched on a very important point about access and exposure, and how your environment ultimately frames your reference about the world. The kids that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, if you ask them, when they start our program, we ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Typically, their ability to see beyond their circumstances is what limits them. And if you ask kids that are in the private school environment, what do you want to be when you grow up? They have been exposed to the internet, to TVs, so they're able to imagine a life beyond their circumstances. So what the Young Entrepreneurs Program does is that it empowers people to believe that despite your background, you have a place to play in the world. And we say that everybody is born a star, and the world around you shouldn't force you to become a square when you have a gift and an ability that you're born with.
Where do you find your children? What sort of time do kids have to give? And also importantly, what is the cost and how is it funded?
So the foundation is, or the kids rather, we find them within the public school network that are in township areas and in rural communities. And we go hand in hand with our corporate partners. We invite them to adopt the kids in those school environments to go through the Young Entrepreneurs Program.
And how much time does the kid have to put in? 1 hour a week, 2 hours?
It is 1 hour a week. Some schools we are able to facilitate one hour a week during the school time, or otherwise we are in the extracurricular time slot.
So Zuki, for people who may wish to fund kids or a group of kids through the foundation, what kind of money are we talking about?
We don't dictate. However, for our corporate partners, we say for about 200 kids, $500,000. And that takes them through an entire program for a year. It equips them with the various products that allow them to start and run their own business. And for a whole year, they're doing financial literacy and an entrepreneurship program with facilitators. And we go into the toughest of environments to really shed light to kids who otherwise would never know. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think, first of all, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Secondly, I want to thank you for what young entrepreneurs are doing for young people in South Africa, the people who hopefully are going to become the next generation of entrepreneurs and people who are going to build large-scale business, create employment, and help South Africa go forward. What I'd like to get on to now, if I may, is why we are here, what we are doing. So we are really looking to connect as many people who can mentor some people out there, help them on their journey, the same as has been done by you. And I'm then going to ask you, how many hours of your valuable time can you give as a mentor to the mentees out there who would love to be mentored by you?
On the spot?
On the spot.
20 hours.
20.
Is that good?
25?
Are we bargaining?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do 30.
30.
So that it's not a bargain.
That is okay. That's fantastic.
I'll do
Thank you so much for that. And now, to put you on the spot further, do you have somebody, a colleague, a peer, that you would like to challenge so that we can extend this even further?
Yes. Ndando Kubeka.
Ndando Kubeka, okay. And what does he do?
He's a tech entrepreneur.
Tech entrepreneur.
Yes.
That sounds fantastic. So thank you very much for that. Our production team will make contact with him, and we'll see how many hours we can squeeze out of him.
Yeah, good luck. He's very busy scaling businesses and doing fantastic.
And we're going to tell him that you've challenged him, and if he doesn't come up with more than 30 hours, he's going to look a little bit bad. Zuki, in closing, a copy of my book.
Oh, wow.
I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the Mentorship Challenge. We're now with Gisele. In business, we usually make hard and calculated decisions, but sometimes emotion creeps in and could have an effect and a bearing on the decisions that are made. What part did emotion play in Gisele's career choices? Let's see if we can find out. Gisele, thank you. Welcome. Really a pleasure to have you.
Oh, it's lovely to be here.
You've had a really interesting career, so for the benefit of the viewers, Gisele started at Times Media. She was in charge of all magazine publication, but the really big thing, and I think which defined that part of your career, was the launch of Elle magazine. I think it was about 1995. It was the first international publication to come to South Africa after the elections, the democratic elections. And I recall a huge launch at Sandton Square, because I know my wife was there, I think 3,000 odd people. And you actually
have a very good memory.
Yeah, and you won an award for the best international magazine launch.
Yes.
One of many, many awards. It's clearly very, very good at what you do. But what was it that put you into the publishing world? Is it something you always wanted to do? You're passionate about it?
Oh, for as long as I can remember. I mean, when I was at school, I launched the school newspaper. I mean, I lived in a dream world a lot of the time. I had this fantasy that I would be the editor of Vogue one day. We didn't get Elle, funny enough, in South Africa in those days because the French did not allow their magazines. You know, they were much more strict around sanctions. But the Americans, I think you would know, were not as strict. So I used to read Vogue and Vanity Fair, and I used to dream that, you know, one day I would be, you know, probably editing or working on a magazine like that. And that's really what the dream was. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go and study journalism. My mother was very ill, and I had to stay here in Johannesburg, so I did a degree at Wits. But as soon as I left Wits, I started looking for a job in publishing. And it took me about a year. It wasn't that easy because I didn't have a strict, you know, I had economics and politics as my majors, and English. But I didn't have a Rhodes journalism degree. But eventually I found a job after about a year and working in other places, a year and a half, and that's really where it started. I started with a small publishing company, promoted. I was very fortunate. I found a good mentor at that company, and he mentored me and he promoted me very quickly. And then I was headhunted by the CEO of Times Media to go and work there, funny enough, on Business Day and Financial Mail, because I had economics. Yeah. And but I looked like quite a creative person, and they gave me the first ever marketing job. In those days, there were no marketing jobs on newspapers because newspapers just automatically kind of marketed themselves. And it wasn't long after that they launched a magazine called Playboy in South Africa. And the publisher of Playboy, after about 8 months and lots of controversy, walked out one afternoon. And I was sitting in my office at 11 Diagonal Street, sorry, the tall glass building, beautiful building. CEO walked into my office and said, "There's no publisher on Playboy. Do you want to walk across the passageway and take over that job?" I have to say I was not really, you know, specifically at that point in time. I was very young. I had a lot of ambition, and I was obviously quite, you know, intelligent. But I did not have depth of experience, and that was a real challenging job.
So quite interesting.
Yeah.
So, degree in economics. You start off on Business Day, you end up, and from this passion that you had, was it really publishing driven or fashion driven?
Well, you know, I've always had an interest in fashion, just personally, but, you know, I never saw myself having a career in fashion. It was a career in working for publications, media. I really wanted to be in media. And, you know, as things turned out, Playboy was the door that opened, it was the door, the entry point to which I could, together with the company, explore other magazines.
Yeah, but now you're coming into this environment in the 1990s as a woman.
Yeah.
Okay. And we know in South Africa in particular, we're quite a chauvinistic society. So how did you find that?
So the truth of it was incredibly challenging for me. I was very young. At the time, I was in my mid-20s, and most of my peers were still at university, actually. I'd gone to university very young through my circumstances at home. I'd got a job before I was 21. I was working before I was 21. I graduated before I was 21. And, but I was a little bit naive about the corporate workplace. However, I think that I had parents who were very good around teaching me values, and I think that those values stood me in good stead, and I was very resilient. And those two things, I think, helped separate the chaff from the wheat.
I think people very often forget that parents are mentors.
Yes.
And the values and the the things you taught when you won and that are inculcated, that they're really your first mentors and play a very, very valuable part. But then you leave the Times Media Group and you leave publishing and you go into the banking world and take on a huge job in terms of being in charge of all media at a time, and also digital and social media at a time when it was really in its infancy.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a very big change and a challenge.
One of the most exciting times of my life, apart from launching L, I have to say. First National Bank is the most innovative bank, I think, still today. In those days, the team, Michael Jordan was the CEO, and the team were, extraordinary. It was a very tough decision for me to leave Times Media. I'd been there for 16 years. They were my family. It was actually quite traumatic, but the lure of going to work for First National Bank and setting up a media department was just too great. And
so you do that very successfully, and then you left to join your family business.
Yeah.
And you say that's one of your biggest regrets.
It was. And that's, I think I was doing really well at First National Bank. We had amazing visionary leadership. I encouraged the bank to go on Twitter. We were the first bank on Twitter, the first bank to start buying Google AdWords. We set up an internal media department, which they still have today, that really set the pace. And Michael and my report, Derek Carson's, were extremely open and supportive of the innovation. So I learned a huge amount about what was happening in the digital space. It really still helps me today.
Stay tuned to this special interview. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the Mentorship Challenge. We're back with our interview with Gisele, and hopefully we're going to be able to find out how emotion has played a part in her career decisions. Gisele, so when you left to join the family business, how much did emotion play in that decision?
Oh, 100%, sadly. Because I think that, one day I'll write the book about it. I love my family, and certainly I believe on an emotional level it was the right thing to do with my father. But going into family businesses are extremely challenging. I was not prepared for it at all. I thought I would handle it very easily. The dynamics were well beyond anything I'd been trained to handle in the corporate workplace, because they are all based in emotion.
So in essence, the decision, normally in business one takes cold, calculated decisions, but sometimes there's an element of emotion and it's either good or bad. So
Correct.
I'd then like to go on to the next part and ask if emotion, because after you left the family business, you now went and bought back or got the rights to publish L.
Yes.
So you went in a full circle.
Yes.
Okay. From L, from the beginning to the end. Now you've got it back. How much emotion was there in that decision?
Well, I also got longevity, and I have to say that, while I might be known, as the launch publisher of L, the one passion that I truly do have is longevity, which is the health magazine, which I completely own. And that was what I got back first. So I was very fortunate that Times Media were open to selling me longevity. Then I actually took on in a consortium. We got stuff. So I then two, and then the offer of the potential of the license for L came along. And at the time, it was quite a big decision because I couldn't do all of them. So I had to relinquish stuff, which I did. And Toby Shapshak is the very competent publisher of stuff. And I was very delighted that we had that time together and that he could carry on growing the brand, which he's done with his partner, Sally. Then I took on L, which was the full circle in a way. And it was hugely challenging for me because, again, the market had shifted.
Was it a cold, calculated decision based on circulation, or was there this, I want to go back, this was emotion?
It was calculated in the sense that I believed that there could be, greater opportunity to do certain things with L into the future. So yes, of course, I had an emotional attachment. It was like having a child 21 years ago. Even though it's not human, I can tell you it takes almost more effort to have a magazine and grow it up and make sure it's stable.
When I did research on you, one of the things that really struck me was a quote. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read it verbatim to our viewers because it certainly resonated with me, and I think it will encapsulate a lot of who and what you are and what I think a lot of our viewers should be. So the quote reads, and viewers, please listen: "Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind." Dr. Sears. I mean, that is just so prophetic. And I think, is that how you live your life?
Yes. That's how I've chosen to live my life. And I do believe people should live by that, because you have to be true to yourself. If you don't do what is true to you, you won't be happy. Yeah. You won't be successful.
Absolutely. The other question I'd like to ask you, you're in publishing, you're doing longevity, various other things, but print media as an industry is under huge threat from digital. How do you see that playing out, and how do you see the future of print media?
So, I don't like to look at things as in we're just in print media, because if you look at longevity, it's a brand. It exists in the printed format, but it also exists online in the digital format. You can get it on your phone. It may even exist in other avenues over time. So even if you look at the Sunday Times, to you it has some meaning to you as a brand. So it's online, you relate to it then. I think that print media is able to and is already adopting to digital. It's not easy, because with anything in life, everyone is being disrupted. Taxi industry is being disrupted.
Everything's being disrupted.
Car rental industry, property,
So Gisele, we spoke about digital and print media, and earlier this year, you got from Kagiso Media this, I don't quite understand what it is, but it's Celebrity Works. What is this? I don't understand.
Okay, so SA Celebrity Works is a company that has taken ownership of a website that Kagiso launched, which is called celebs.com. And it's the powerhouse of Africa as far as I'm concerned. We will do in September, when I say we, the team, I have a business partner, an American business partner, who was one of the co-founders of the Huffington Post. His name's James Cannon Boyce. And the executive editor, Zibulele Dadla, who's on our team and a shareholder. We will do close to 800,000 unique visitors this month. It's extraordinary.
It means people who come onto the site.
Uniquely, yes. So it's not how many times they read the pages. Okay. So we have about over 7 million engagements. That means interactions on our Facebook, web, and social media sites, all to do with celebs. That's monthly.
Forgive my ignorance. So what are they seeing on this website?
They're coming for news about celebrities, entertainers, what's happening, and it's just very South African, and it's very original. It's original content. The team are all under 30. I mean, this is really the digital natives that we all read about. It only exists in digital, so it has video outplay as well. So we do video and have a YouTube channel. I mean, it's really extraordinary, and it's mobile first.
And it's South African celebrities.
It's South African, 100%, created by South Africans.
You must appear on it, because you're a great South African celebrity.
I don't even come close at the moment to the celebrities like Boiti and Bonang and Minnie, who on Sunday, Minnie Dlamini got married, and we had over 150,000 visitors reading about her wedding.
Amazing.
Just in one day.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So, and obviously this is where you see growth.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier on that you were very fortunate in your first job to be mentored.
Yes.
I think, as you know, the purpose of this program is for us to connect as many people out there who need mentorship, who would like mentorship. So now I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, in terms of the mentorship challenge, how many hours of your time are you prepared to give us?
Well, that's an interesting one. How many hours would you like, Mark?
Oh, hundreds. What I would like and what I'm going to get are two totally different things. I think we have to recognize that everybody's busy, they're running a business.
Of course.
So it's a question of,
sure.
Could I suggest 30?
Yes, of course. I think that's absolutely doable.
Okay, 30 hours, fantastic, really very, very good. And now can I ask you something else? We're trying to spread this as far as we can. Do you have a peer or a colleague that you could challenge?
Well, I'd like to challenge Virginia Magapatuna. She is the corporate communications head of First National Bank, actually. And I think she's in a unique position to see, and she's a woman, and she's a very successful woman in a corporate environment, and I would challenge her.
That will be fantastic. We will ask our production team to contact her and see how many hours we can get from her. Gisele, really, thank you so much for joining us and for your amazing pledge. A pledge of mentorship with you is totally priceless. If you would like to have the incredible opportunity of being mentored by Gisele, please register online and apply for the mentorship. Gisele, I'd like to give you a copy of my book in appreciation for what you've done. Once more, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.